Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are unpacking a really crucial paradigm shift from the Ransom-Kick resilience model. We're looking at why some validations actually matter a whole lot more than some applications. Look, for decades, our continuity playbooks have been obsessively focused on technology, right? Well, today, we're going to explore why having a humming IT environment absolutely does not guarantee a functioning business, and we'll dig into what you actually need to be protecting.
So let's just jump right in and bust a universally accepted boardroom myth. It's this idea that having a critical application up and running is exactly the same thing as having the ability to operate. The logic seems pretty obvious at first glance, you know? No systems, no productivity. But honestly, it's fundamentally incomplete. An active application doesn't automatically mean a critical capability is actually being executed by your team. They are not equals.
You know the drill. When organizations sit down to map out their critical assets, the usual suspects pop up immediately. We're talking ERP systems, CRMs, email platforms, production systems. And focusing on these makes total sense. They're the bedrock of modern operations for sure. But treating this IT infrastructure as the absolute sole driver of business continuity, that creates a pretty dangerous illusion. We start falling into this trap of believing, hey, if the servers are humming, the business is humming.
Okay, picture this. A crisis hits. Your IT resilience plan kicks in, and it works flawlessly. The applications are totally available, all the data is accessible, your users are fully connected. Honestly, the IT dashboard is glowing beautifully green, and your IT director is probably thrilled. But there's a huge problem. The business is completely paralyzed. Nothing is actually moving forward. Why? Because decisions are impossible. The lights are on, the power's running, but nobody is actually able to steer the ship.
Well, here's the missing link. And it's simple, but completely devastating. Operations block because no decision can be made. And this right here is where that whole IT illusion just shatters. The paralysis you're experiencing in this scenario isn't technological at all. Your firewalls, they held up perfectly. What you have here is a governance failure. Workflows simply cannot progress because the specific human or systemic mechanism that's needed to authorize the very next step is entirely incapacitated.
So what does this all mean? What actually powers the engine of your business? It's the validation. Now, a validation is simply an approval, an arbitration, or a decision. Think of them as the actual gatekeepers of your progress. In literally any enterprise, activities don't just happen autonomously, right? They have to pass through these very specific checkpoints. Without these gatekeepers waving the green flag to move things forward, your operations are going to inevitably slow down to a crawl or just stop altogether.
Let's trace how this looks in a standard real-world business flow. Say a customer order comes in. Awesome, but it doesn't just magically teleport to a delivery truck. First, it requires a commercial approval. Only after that does it move to preparation. Then, boom, it hits another gatekeeper for logistics approval. Then it goes to shipment, and finally, you hit financial approval and invoicing. The point is, operations only ever progress when these sequential validations, whether they're done by a human or an automated system, actually occur. Let's contrast two totally different realities. In the first one, your system works perfectly. The ERP is accessible, employees are clicking around, looking at customer records. Everything is fine. But simultaneously, your value is completely frozen in ice. Why? Simply because the specific individual who is authorized to approve strategic orders is unavailable. Or maybe the data needed for an arbitration can't be verified. The system is functioning flawlessly, but the value chain is just dead in the water. This right here is the microanatomy of how your organization actually generates worth. It's a straightforward four-step transformation. You take raw information, and through a validation, it's converted into a decision. That decision then unlocks an action, and that action finally creates value. It's a chain reaction. But if you break this chain at the decision link, all that pristine, perfectly backed up information sitting in your CRM becomes entirely useless. And this brings us to a really massive strategic shift. Applications merely support your activities. They are just the vessel. Validations, on the exact other hand, actually allow flows to progress. They are the engine. The big takeaway for resilience leaders here is crystal clear. True continuity depends far, far more on mapping out and protecting your validations than just throwing shields around your IT tools.
If you are sitting in the C-suite, this is your brand new map for operational resilience. We call it the true hierarchy of continuity. It starts down at the foundation with the application, which holds the data. But that data absolutely must inform the validation. The validation yields the decision, which triggers the action to finally reach actual value at the very peak. Applications are the foundation, yes, for sure, but they are not the pinnacle of the business.
I want you to ask yourself a pretty piercing governance question right now. Do you know which of your applications are critical? If you're a CIO or a CISO, the answer is probably yes. But do you know which validations are critical? For a lot of organizations, the answer to that is unsettlingly vague. It really forces us to take a step back and ask, have we been protecting the wrong things this whole time? Or maybe, have we just stopped our protection planning halfway up the ladder?
Which brings us to the absolute core mantra of the Ransom-Kick resilience model. Create value, maintain value, rebuild value. Notice what's missing there. It doesn't say maintain servers or rebuild networks. Your business continuity plans and your crisis management protocols have to be relentlessly aligned with value. And as we've just established, value only flows when those critical validations are actually executed.
Now, understanding this whole paradigm shift conceptually is one thing, but operationalizing it, that's another beast entirely. The source material actually highlights platforms like Arkeionis.app, which offer the structuring, visualization, and governance environments you need to actually do this heavy lifting. They let organizations map out these incredibly complex dependencies, trace those specific business flows, and clearly identify exactly where your critical gatekeepers live.
I'm going to leave you with one final provocative question to think about. Is your continuity plan protecting your tools, or is it protecting your value? Because if you're only focusing on applications, data, and infrastructure, you are quite literally only guarding the tools. True operational resilience means you have to secure the arbitrations, the decisions, and the critical validations that actually keep the heartbeat of your business alive. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.